Hi, my name's Lexi. I am a third year student in media studies, and these are a couple things that I wish I knew before going into university, before applying and thinking about what I wanted to study. So let's talk about it. So, one of the first things I wish I truly understood about it is how mind bogglingly expensive it is to get an education. It is probably in South Africa and upwards of 200,000 for a full 3 year degree. Regardless if you go public or private institution, it is just enormously expensive. So, firstly, look at bursaries and scholarships. Those would probably be your best options if it is a little bit too much. In addition to tuition, you also have to look at things like textbooks, any kind of materials you might need for your classes. If you're doing an arts degree and you may have to do practicals, you'll need to look at the materials yourself. Not to mention anything that you might need in addition to doing the schoolwork. So, for example, my university, we do 1 week on campus and then 1 week online. If you need a tablet or a laptop or something to get into class and do all of your assignments, that's another added cost. On top of things like textbooks, if you decide to move out or live on campus, you need to look at accommodation, your own personal expenses. But if you're like me, I stay at home and I commute to class. So that is about a half an hour drive, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is quite a toll on petrol. So it's just something to keep in mind, that it is a big commitment and it is very expensive. It is very costly. But personally, I think, education is worth the world, and just learning so many new different things and having that backing behind yourself that you do have an education is so incredibly important. And especially as a woman, not not to bring in whole feminism and everything, but it's really important to just have your own backing, your own personal safety net of having an education and of being able to do something with it. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the work. It's a little difficult to get an understanding of what you're doing because it's so incredibly different to doing things like homework in high school and doing assignments in high school, because it's a completely different setup. You're not doing 8 to 9 subjects and doing smaller assignments for them. You're doing maybe 1 to 2 subjects per term or per block, and you'd have to do larger assignments for them. For example, like myself, we only get a subject for about 8 weeks, and within those 8 weeks, we have a formative, which is throughout the middle of that block, it's called, and then a summative, which is like the final exam of that subject. The work itself is there's more of a heavier workload, and it can be a little bit challenging at times, but it's not something you can't do. It's very easy if you can put your mind to it and you can sit down with yourself. And that's where my next point comes in with planning. It is so important to plan your weeks out, to plan your days out, to see, okay, I have this class, I'm gonna come back home and I'm gonna study for this amount of time, and then I can have some free time, I can do this. And it's so important to take chunks out of your day like that and purposefully put them towards university and purposefully put them towards your work, because at the end of the day, that is what gets you ahead, that is what helps you learn. If you're anything like me and I'll be sitting studying, lose the distractions. Put the phone on do not disturb. If I hear a message come through, if I hear a notification come through, I immediately I need to check it right now. There is that sense of like urgency where it's my phone's gone off, I need to see what happened and I need to know right now, but I'm studying. And it's really important to kind of just remove that distraction. Put it on do not disturb, put it on silent, immersing yourself in the work and planning times out where you can do that and where you do have free time. Because I know from experience, from first year and second year, or about halfway through second year, I was very bad at planning. I sucked. I'm not going to beat around the bush with it. I never really planned out specific times to study and to sit down and, like I said, immerse yourself in the work and actually kind of understand and make a note of what you don't understand. And that is my next point, is to speak to your lecturer. It's so important. When you've gotten your lecture and you know what you're doing and you don't understand something, it is so important to speak to them and kind of build that relationship where if there's something you're struggling with, you can go to your lecturer and say, listen, I don't understand this, can you please help me with it? But also, having that good relationship with your lecturer can be the difference between failing or passing. In doing media studies, we have to write a lot of essays. And because of that, everyone's writing style is a little bit different. A lot of the time, what happens is you write this really great essay and you've got all the work done and you just struggle to word it. It's really important to be able to go back to your lecturer and go, okay, well, I'm not too happy with this. Can you give me any pointers for writing it more in a more concise manner, or getting the information out a little bit more clearly? And even that, in your lecturer knowing and understanding you, I'm not going to say it gives you leeway. It doesn't give you leeway to kind of do whatever you want, but having a bad reputation with your lecturer, it is going to be a little bit more difficult, because they'll look at your essay and go, well, I can see that you kind of understood it, but your writing's not great. You didn't put this and this together, and nothing adds you up. They're going to be very, very critical about your work. Whereas when you have that relationship with your lecturer, and they can kind of get an understanding for how you word things and for how you put information together, and they can see that you do understand the work. It's just kind of getting it across that's the problem. They can help you with that, and they would be more willing to do so. It really is important to speak to your lecturer to make sure that if you don't understand anything, there is always that channel that you can go through and just speak to them and say, listen, I don't know what's going on, I need help. So I am going to get a little personal for a second in my own experience with applying to universities, and it's not something I talk about to everyone, because it is a little embarrassing to admit that there were universities that I applied to, and there were colleges that I applied to, and things that I applied to that I just didn't have the grades to get into. And that's a big part of university, is accepting that failure and rejection. One of my lecturers put it in a way that was, university is a halfway point between being an adult and being a student. You're still coming into yourself, but you've still got that structure of school in a sense. And he said, when you're at this age, rejection and failure can feel like it's enormous, like it's all encompassing, it's suffocating. And I myself have felt that more than once. University can kind of give you that feeling of, oh my god, I'm gonna fail, I'm never gonna do anything with my life, I failed this exam, it's over. But what he really said that was so important was to take that failure and to use it to improve. My main point here is, look at what you really want to study. For myself, I really, really wanted to study anthropology. I loved looking at like fossils and doing that in biology and kind of understanding them. It was so incredibly interesting to me. And I ended up applying to universities, and I didn't get into anthropology, and it was such a massive knock to myself. But I also didn't quite understand what I wanted to study. And that's what my next point is if you are a little bit confused as to what you want to do, maybe look at doing some short courses on the specific subject and be realistic. If you know, like myself, I struggle a lot with maths and with physics, that kind of thing. I would never go into medicine. I would never go into like anything accounting wise, and I know that for myself, that I'm aware of that, and it's important to kind of take a second to look at yourself and think, what have I been doing? Sorry for all the cars, this road is super busy this morning. But it's important to look at that and to think, well, I know I'm not particularly good at this, I'm not going to study it. It's not something that I have an interest in. But also for me, like with anthropology, I'm not good at maths. I'm not good. I'll say that outright. But I didn't quite realize what I actually wanted to study. I kind of had this idea that, that old saying where it's like, oh, if you do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, or something like that. And yes, I loved learning about anthropology, and I loved learning about like ancient humans and how everything worked and how everything came to be at the point we are at now. But it wasn't something that I could see myself doing. It wasn't something that I could see myself going into. It was just something that I really had such a deep interest for. And that's why I wanted to study literature and creative writing. And when I was looking through my current university, just before applying, when I was looking through their webpage, and I saw they did offer literature, they offered creative writing, and I just had this moment. I looked through the media studies webpage, and I just felt, you know what, this is right. This is something that I have an interest in, and this is something that I know I'm capable of, and I know that I can really put in the work to this. I can understand the work, and I can understand what is being taught, because this is something I'm interested in. And the biggest part of media studies is that it's actually forced me, especially online, it's forced me out of my shell, and it's forced me to do things like content creation. That's kind of what I'm getting at. I know I'm being very roundabout with it, but understand what you want to study, and understand that there are things that you may have an interest in, there are things that you may really enjoy, but is it enough to want to go into a career? Because, like I said in my previous point, university is very expensive, and it is a lot of money. I know a lot of people who have gotten through their degrees and all of a sudden just gone, well, I don't want to do this. I don't really have an interest in this. And it's so important to understand that before you go into your degree. What do you have an interest in, and what are you capable of doing? Like I said earlier, if you struggle like maths with me, you're gonna struggle in university unless you really are willing to push yourself and to force yourself into that mindset. Entirely, it's a personal decision. I'm not going to stop anyone from applying to whatever university and whatever subjects they want to study, but it is just something to keep in mind. So my next point is nothing to scare you off, but it's something to be aware of. University admin sucks. University is going to treat you like an adult and expect you to understand things like an adult. And that is where the point I said earlier, your planning comes in, is that is up to you. And it's the same with admin. I mean, there have been so many times where, I mean, I've had issues enrolling, I've had issues with my classes, and I've kind of struggled to get hold of somebody just to help, because I don't know who to go to. And there's always just this roundabout of, you know, oh, I'll help you, but, you know, this person can help you better, but you need to speak to this person about it. And it's not something that is unique to where I'm studying. I have a lot of friends who are in online schools. They're in UNISA, they're in Stellenbosch, UCT, and it's kind of just a overarching theme that you are now over 18, you're an adult, you need to handle and manage your own things, and it's up to you at the end of the day. Because if you're having an issue and, yeah, okay, you send an email, you call them, and then that's it, and the issue becomes bigger, it is still up to you to keep up with that. It is still up to you to follow that and to keep on top of it. Because at the end of the day, I understand that university admins deal with so much work. And you as the student need to manage your own personal things. You need to keep on top of them and make sure that you are the one that's aware of what's going on. Another thing that I'd really like to speak about is, like I said earlier, there's kind of this awkward stage that you're in when you're in university. This is mainly tailored towards people who are just coming out of high school and going straight into university, or maybe taking a gap year and then going into university. But what's so important is to remember that you are your own person, and comparison is the thief of joy. I've found it in myself so many times, where I'll sit in class and I'll take notes, but I'm not really understanding the work, and then there's a girl next to me who's taking so many more notes, and she's got a laptop out and she's working and she's writing everything down, and she's just asking questions, getting it, right all the time. And I felt a little bit like, oh, well, I'm sitting here and I'm just writing my notes down, and I'm just going home and studying quickly. Like she probably has everything figured out and she understands the work, and she's just better than me. And it's so dangerous to get into that mindset, because you will never get anywhere comparing yourself to other people. You'll never get anywhere sitting there and thinking, I'm not good enough. Because you are. You obviously got into university for a reason. You're sitting in that class for a reason, whether you are in first year, second year, or third year, or if you're doing a 4-year degree. You still got to where you are, hopefully, by your own accomplishments. But you're sitting where you are right now for a reason, and it's so important to understand that, not to kind of be overly proud of what you are doing, but to understand that you did that yourself. As long as you weren't using ChatGPT or plagiarizing or anything, I mean, obviously, you still did that yourself. You deserve a seat at the table because that's your own work. That's you showing up for yourself, and nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can look at you and go, oh, well, you're not doing this and this, so you don't belong in here. Because you do. At the end of the day, you do. You've put yourself there. And I feel like I struggled with this a lot in first year, also because I was so much older than the people that I was going to university with. I left school at 19, I worked a full-time job for a year, and then I started university. And I just felt like, oh my god, all of these people are so much younger than me and they've just got it all figured out. And the first years at that point must have been about 18, 19. I was hitting 20, 21. And it doesn't seem like such a big gap, but at that age it feels like such a big gap. And you look at these kids and you're like, oh my soul, like they've got everything figured out at such a young age, and I'm sitting here and I feel like somebody get me a cane, I'm the elderly of the class type of thing. It's so important just to understand that everyone is on their own path, and this is your path. And if you're not happy with it, change it. If you're not happy with what you're doing or what you're studying, don't waste the time just going, oh, well, I might as well finish it, like, oh, I might as well sit in here. It also ties into my other point of making sure that you know what you want to study. Just making sure that you're prepared to, and that you're not going to sit halfway through your degree and go, oh, I don't know if I like this. It's a bit difficult, especially because of how expensive it is. And not everybody has parents that can afford degree after degree after degree. It's a bit of a difficult situation. So just be more aware of that you are in a very delicate state of life at this point, and you may think like, oh, I've got it all figured out, I know what I'm doing, I know what my life is going to be like, and life will throw a curveball. There is no doubt about it that life will absolutely just turn around and, oh, this is okay, cool, no, not happening. And that's just kind of part of being in this life state. This is such an important time in your life where you're really discovering yourself, and it's so important to put yourself out there, learn what you like, learn what you don't like, learn a bit more about yourself. You've just come out of high school where you've kind of been told that, okay, this is how everything works, this is what you do, this is what you wear, this is what you say, this is how you do exams, this is how you do assignments. And then you get to university and suddenly none of your lecturers care about, like, if you are typing your work or writing your work. If you're going to sit in class and sit on your phone, nobody's going to care, nobody's going to tell you off, because you're not a child, and ultimately you paid to be there. It's your responsibility to pay attention to the materials and to pay attention to the lecturer. I think so many big revelations come to us in our 20s, and in saying this, I mean, I'm only 22. What do I know? It's such an important time just for growth for the rest of our lives, that enjoy it. Honestly, if I can say anything, and let that be my last point because this is probably a very long video, enjoy where you are, enjoy what you are doing. Not everybody gets the opportunity to study, not everybody gets the opportunity to go to university, and I get that there's this whole thing of, oh, well, everyone's got a degree, but go out there, try. If you can do it, do it. There's literally nothing stopping you. If you really, I know I said in an earlier point, don't study maths if you're bad at maths, but if you really want to go into, I don't know, astrophysics or whatever, and you're not good at maths, take extra classes, learn, do better, always try to better yourself. That's the one thing that I've taken away from university, and it's really, really important. There is literally nothing stopping you at all. there is, I mean, what people say, there is what people do around you, and you can choose to ignore that and go, well, you think of me like this, but I don't really want to be like that, so I'm not going to. I also have someone very important to introduce, if I may, and she has been sitting behind me this entire time, and usually she's so noisy, but I feel I need to give her a little bit of a shout out. This is Bambi, and she has been sitting so well behind me, just minding her own business. No, thank you. Just minding her own business, and she deserves that appreciation. So that's everything. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you'd like to follow for more informative content, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!